Welcome, everybody. I'm your host, Scott Ritsema. We've got a special guest on a topic that I don't think anybody's ever said I really need to delve into just oatmeal for an hour program. But there's more to the oatmeal conversation than you might expect. From Ashwin Sukumaran, our guest today, he is the one of the directors at UT Pines Institute, specializing in natural health. His breadth of knowledge in natural health empowers individuals like yourself, like people you can share this video with, to embrace sustainable living through eating healthy foods. And they deal with diet, they deal with all of the lifestyle factors that can improve our well-being and that of our loved ones. Let's bring up Ashwin, Jeremy. Welcome back, Ashwin. Last time we had a really good conversation on kidney health. I really learned a lot from you on that. I know our guests did as well. And we were discussing okay, where do you want to take us next time? And you have a list, you do seminars galore and have 100 topics you could speak on. And both Jeremy, the producer, and I were like, just oatmeal, just a program on oatmeal. You gotta bring that to the table. What got you interested in really just this particular grain, oats, as a benefit to mankind from our creator?
Yeah, it's a really interesting story, actually. There was a few years ago, there was a gentleman who came to UT Pines, where I work right now, and he came from Brazil. Maybe I don't know if I should say his name. I probably won't say his name, but I know he wouldn't mind me sharing this. He was still kind of learning English at that time, and he would go to work, and after work he would come back and he would be working out in the gym that's right near my place. And I would pass him, and he would say after his workout, he would have this bowl of oatmeal in his hand. And again, he was still learning English, didn't know a lot of words at that time. Now he's pretty fluent, but at that time he just knew a few words. And so when I would pass him, he would hold up his bowl of oatmeal and look at me, and he would say, "Oatmeal, brother, perfect for you." And so I thought, okay, good to know, thank you. And every day I would pass him and he would say the same thing, "Oatmeal, brother." And so I waved back at him and I said, "Oatmeal, brother." and then this became a fun little thing where we would, he would say, "Oatmeal, brother." I would say, "Oatmeal, brother." Then it got a little out of hand because all the other guys kind of heard about this, and we started greeting each other saying, "Oatmeal, brother." And then
new guests are coming like, where did I just get inducted into a cult?
Yeah, exactly. And then and then it really started getting out of hand. We would be in some kind of administrative meeting and we're trying to solve a problem, and someone will say, "You know what we really need? Oatmeal would make this better." It started really so,
oh man, I love UT Pines. You guys are the best.
We're a bit crazy, but we're thankful that we have a little sense of humor. We had it started getting to the point where people would send oatmeal as wedding gifts when people would get married. And then we had a seminar where we cover different health topics, and just kind of as a joke, I said, "Well, I'll talk about oatmeal, brother, perfect for you," and I forgot about it. And then finally, when they were publicly announcing the topics, and they said, "Oatmeal, brother, perfect for you."
No way, like for real.
So I said, okay, now I have to actually put together this presentation on oatmeal. And as I did so, I found a lot of really interesting things in my research. And I just want to say the fact that we're on this podcast and I'm talking with my friend Scott Ritsema publicly about oatmeal just says that this has gone to another level that I did not expect.
It's no longer an inside joke. It is fully public now. You guys are totally exposed as being obsessed with oatmeal. I know you can pick up the T-shirt in the UT Pines gift store, right? The memes are appearing in people's head about oatmeal, brother.
That's right.
Perfect for you.
Yeah, that's right. Oatmeal, brother, perfect for you on the shirt. That's right. Well, but yeah, that's basically how I started getting interested in the subject, and I'm not saying that I'm the world's leading expert on oatmeal or anything, but I did find a few things in my research. So when we can talk about it as we
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. Give us the headliner. Give us your bottom line on oatmeal. If somebody was to take away a short on oatmeal, what's great about it, and then we'll unpack it further.
okay. Yeah, that's a good question. So, oatmeal, of course, is a whole grain, plant based food. And these types of foods tend to be beneficial overall for human health. I found that there are benefits when it comes to insulin resistance and diabetes. And what I did not expect to find was the immunomodulatory effects of oatmeal and how it can actually influence our immune system. Of course, there are other things as well, um, and but it seems to be more beneficial for more people to take oatmeal as a regular part of their diet. I'm not saying it should replace everything, but it certainly would be beneficial for most people to incorporate into their regular diet.
So, you mentioned immunomodulating effects that it basically improves your immune system in layman's terms.
Yeah,
Diabetes. Now, wouldn't people? I mean, can we go into the diabetes first?
sure.
Isn't this, we can't have too much grain, too much carbs, and isn't that bad for diabetes?
Yeah, yeah. It's we have to understand what diabetes is. So there's type 1, there's type 2. With type 2 diabetes, basically uh, you have high insulin and high glucose. And the reason why there's high insulin is because uh, the there's usually intracellular fat that's disallowing the insulin to be effective on the cell to allow the glucose to come in. So usually when we eat, our blood sugar goes up. That's very normal, and that is a good healthy process. As our blood sugar goes up, then our pancreas is stimulated to produce insulin, right? And insulin will help to allow the glucose to go into the cell to be used for energy by the cell. And but when there's too much fat in the cells, then you have high glucose and high insulin because the fat is not allowing uh, the insulin to allow the glucose to come in. And so, what is the role of oatmeal? No pun intended, right? So if you so if you think about it, oatmeal definitely has carbs, it has proteins, it does have fat, it has fiber. I think there's about 27 grams of carbs, there's about 5 grams of protein, there's 2 point something grams of fat, healthy fat, and there's 4 grams of fiber. So it'll give you about 150 some calories in 1 cup uh, of cooked oatmeal, meaning just oats with water, not with other things, right? And these are all good, healthy things. And a lot of people are afraid that carbs are going to cause diabetes, but we actually do need healthy carbs. The issue is when we have refined carbs and excess carbs,
Hmm.
because any excess will be turned into fat, and then fat will cause the insulin resistance, right? But we do need healthy carbs because that's where we do need glucose, um, but along with that, it's not just carbs by itself, but you have protein, you have fats, you have fiber, and you'll actually find that people who take in oatmeal will have better uh, glucose. They actually tend to lose weight. They tend to see their cholesterol go down, and because again, people are really stuck on this idea that carbs itself will cause weight gain and will cause uh, diabetes, which is simply not the case. We're designed to eat these things, but the issue is to get it from the right source, meaning get the whole grain versus refined things, and getting it in the right amount, right? So on the subject of insulin resistance, there's something called the oatmeal cure. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, Scott.
Tell us about it.
All right, so this was, and it's actually published in PubMed. You can look up the article, "The Short-Term Dietary Oatmeal Interventions in Adults with Type 2 Diabetes." And this was actually a concept that was described more than 100 years ago. And and there was a German gentleman. I won't attempt to say his name because I don't want to mess it up. But basically, he started prescribing a diet um, with oatmeal and some vegetables and I think he actually used butter and things like that. But of course, if you want to do it from a plant based standpoint, you omit that. And what they did was they did this short term dietary intervention of basically oatmeal and vegetables, and they found that there were significant reductions in blood glucose concentrations and improved insulin sensitivity in patients with type 2 diabetes. There was actually a case study, a very interesting case study, again published on PubMed. So you have the article is called "Oatmeal Interventions in Severe Insulin Resistance on the Intensive Care Unit." There was this case study of a 67-year-old woman with type 2 diabetes who went into the ICU because she had, I believe she had pneumonia and she had respiratory failure. And so they had to put her on ventilation. And within a couple of days, she developed extreme insulin resistance and required more than 200 units of insulin per day, which is a lot. That's a lot. And in order to combat this, they gave her basically 180 grams of whole grain oatmeal cooked in water and about 60 grams of carrots. That's all they did. Okay. So they did unprocessed whole grain oatmeal and some carrots. And from day one, matter of fact, I actually have, I don't know if it's possible for me to share my screen, if that's practical, or if I should just state the numbers. But um, basically, day one, day two, and day three, her blood sugars were in the mid 200s. So I'm talking about 249, 252. I think it peaked out one day at 307. So her blood sugar is very, very high, and was not improving for 3 days. And then they did the oatmeal intervention, the oatmeal day. So friends don't let friends skip oat day, right? so so they put her on this oatmeal diet, and they gave her the 180 grams of cooked oatmeal with 60 grams of carrots. And what they found was that her insulin requirements dropped drastically, right? So her they had put her on 205 units of insulin for the day by the third day that she was in ICU. When they started the oatmeal, they reduced her insulin to 105 units, and her numbers dropped into the 100s. I mean, 161 by the end of the day. The second day, so they only did the oatmeal intervention for 2 days, which is very interesting. So day one, they did the oatmeal with the vegetables. Day two, they did the same thing, oatmeal with the vegetables. And her numbers came down to 135. And then after that, she went back onto whatever the regular stuff they were feeding her. And for the following 3 days, she continued to improve as far as her insulin resistance. So her glucose came down to the lower 100s by day 7. And by day 8, her blood sugar was 94 with only 42 units of insulin. So she had a tremendous reduction in her insulin requirements and in her blood sugars. And the only thing that they did was they just did 2 days of this oatmeal and vegetables. And it's interesting that several people have repeated this. They've replicated this and done this with their patients, and they find similar results. Where if they just do 2 days of oatmeal and vegetables, the person's insulin resistance decreases drastically over the next several days. So
That's
yeah, I thought it was
powerful.
fascinating. Yeah,
That is powerful, and it's been that was going to be my next question. Is this replicated? And also, I'm wondering, is it because oatmeal is so awesome, or is it what they are not eating that is
right.
actually the root cause of the diabetes? Like, if you were to do brown rice and vegetables, would you get similar results?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, that was where my train of thought was going next. And when I read that study, I immediately had the same question: what was making the difference? And apparently, there was kind of a twofold conclusion that definitely um, the hypocaloric diet was definitely a big part of the insulin resistance being reversed in this case study and in the others that had replicated this. So calorie restriction, definitely. I mean, it's fasting essentially, right? A type of fast, if you will, and that will definitely decrease uh, fat, and will reduce inflammation and other kinds of things. And but what they also said was that it may not be just the fact that it was hypocaloric, in other words, low calories, and hypocaloric, they usually mean something less than 700 kilocalories. And but not only was it low in calories, but they estimated that the reason why it worked was more than just the hypocaloric diet, but because of some of the properties and some of the things found in oatmeal itself. And one of those things is something called beta glucans. Okay. And so beta glucans are a soluble fiber that's found in oats. It's not just exclusively found in oats. I mean, you can find it in other sources like uh, barley and things like that. But they do tend to be high in oatmeal, and it tends to significantly reduce postprandial glucose, meaning when you check the sugars a couple of hours after eating, and it tends to be lower when people are eating oatmeal because of this type of fiber, which is very good. Um, and also, it's it delays gastric emptying and reduces the mixing of digestive enzymes with the food, and so it can help uh, slow the absorption of glucose as well. So you don't have these very high glucose spikes when you eat whole foods such as oatmeal. And I want to be clear, we're not saying oatmeal is the cure all. We're not worshiping oatmeal or anything like that. But it's just interesting that the Lord put these properties in these foods, I believe.
Mm.
And there's an interesting quote I read from a book written. Oh, I don't know when it exactly was written, but it's been at least 100 some years. It's called Counsels to the Church. And it says this: in order to know what are the best foods, we must study God's original plan for man's diet. He who created man and who understands his needs appointed Adam his food. Behold, he said, I have given you every herb yielding seed, and every tree um, in which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for food. It says in Genesis 1:29, right? And upon leaving Eden to gain his livelihood by tilling the earth under the curse of sin, man received permission to also eat the herbs of the field, right? We find in Genesis 3:18. And so in this book, Counsels to the Church, page 222, it says this: grains, fruits, nuts, and vegetables constitute the diet chosen for us by our Creator. These foods, prepared in as simple and natural a manner as possible, are the most healthful and nourishing. They impart a strength, a power of endurance, and a vigor of intellect that are not afforded by a more complex and stimulating diet. So, so when I read things like this, I think this is wonderful, that God, who created the human anatomy and physiology, knows what works well for it. You know,
Mm.
I tell people all the time, if you have, let's say, if you have a Tesla, the law of the car, of that Tesla car, says you must plug it into the electricity for there to be proper function. If you try to pour gasoline into a Tesla, it doesn't work well. It's not going to work at all. Or if you have a gas powered car, the manufacturer of it, like I have a Subaru, my gas powered Subaru, the Subaru manufacturer says that I must put gas in the tank for there to be proper function. If I pour water in the tank, it won't function well because the manufacturer who designed it says that it doesn't work that way. And I find that God, who designed us, he knows what's best for us, and he provided the things that are best for us, right? And he's the manufacturer, if you will, of the human anatomy, and he knows what works well. And of course, we can always think about the quality of foods that have changed over time, and all this is true. But still, God in his wisdom has provided what we need, and it is still available for us. Right?
Hmm. Well, and you mentioned something earlier about you're not talking about refined foods.
Right.
That's where man comes in and manufactures or really malforms and destroys the value of the nutrients and the proper proportions you were mentioning. It has the carbs and the fat and the protein in there. God put all these micronutrients and macronutrients just for what we need. And we're not talking about GMO junk. We're talking about whole
Right.
plant natural foods. Now, you said something though that it was maybe a little provocative to certain audiences, that God created man in the garden. And there's this idea out there in the mainstream that we evolved over millions
Sure.
of years on a completely different diet.
Right.
And then later on, mankind figured out agriculture, and now cultivated foods are actually we're not well adapted for, and they are the cause of all the problems. You're saying they're the solution because that's the creation account of the Garden of Eden. I appreciate your faith on that. I believe in the Bible as well.
Yeah, I really, we can approach healthcare from an evolution standpoint. And if you approach healthcare from an evolution standpoint, then that means everything is random. Processes are random. There is no order, and order comes through chaos. And that means you can do whatever you want, and there's no right or wrong because everything is random, you know. But approaching healthcare from a creation standpoint, and I'm not saying, I'm not pushing my view on anyone. I'm just sharing what I believe, and everyone is welcome to disagree with it. But if someone approaches healthcare from a creation standpoint, then it does require a measure of faith, just like evolution does. And but from a creation standpoint, we're choosing to believe that order came from intelligence, and that because the order came from intelligence, and we can simply follow the design, just like you follow the manufacturer's recommendations, and you have proper function of your car. Well, if you follow the designer's recommendations, you have proper function of the human body. And if we disregard the manufacturer's recommendations, we can only expect dysfunction, you know. And so, of course, from a evolution standpoint, if there is no designer, then there's no right or wrong. You just do trial and error, and figure it out. Um, but I've been working here at UC Pines Institute for over 11 years, and UC Pines has been around for over 50 years. And it's so interesting how we call the plant-based diet the health recovery diet, because people come here with various conditions, and most of the time people maybe, I don't know, they may be kind of hesitant about doing the plant-based diet or certain things, including certain things in their diet, because there's so many experts on the internet now who have different opinions, which is fine. Um, and I'm not claiming to be one of them, but I'm just saying there are many people with opinions that are very public now. But it's interesting when you see people who are very sick. The best diet in the world on planet Earth right now for recovering health is in fact the plant-based diet, which includes whole grains, which includes healthy fats, which includes healthy proteins, but everything in moderation, in its proper in its proper place and its proper quantity, you know. And I believe no less for oatmeal or for anything we talk about, whether it's vegetables or you know, fruits or grains or fats or anything, it's got to be in the right proportions. Um,
Hmm.
yeah.
You know, one of my favorite things about oatmeal is it's cheap. It's not an expensive food. It
No.
goes a long ways. Although I do want to ask you this. We got refined white flour and a bunch of
Right.
junk refined grains. Are we messing the oatmeal up when we do turn it into quick oats, or is it pretty much all the same? You mentioned rolled oats in your pun earlier,
Yeah.
steel cut oats. Is there like a hierarchy of what's the best oats to go for if you're trying to get these benefits that you're discussing?
Yeah, I can't say I fully know the answer to that, but what I do know is that the closer it is to the whole product, the better. And so yeah, whole grain oats. We're not talking about refined things. Um, yeah, and also we got to be careful when we're buying some of these packaged oatmeal things. It's not just oatmeal in there. You know, there's other stuff there too. There, it's loaded many times with sugar or with other refined things in there, which will contribute to the problem and not to the solution. Remember, in the studies that we reviewed just a few minutes ago, this was plain whole grain oats and vegetables and water. That's it. I mean, it really reminds me of the Daniel diet. You know, when you see it
Hmm.
in
Yeah,
Daniel,
tell
what
us
did
what
he?
that is. What
Oh
is the
yeah,
Daniel diet?
yeah, Daniel. Here, let me pull it up on my in my Bible here. If you go in the book of Daniel in the Bible, in chapter 1, and and Daniel and his friends Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Of course, they were captives in um, in Babylon under the reign of King Nebuchadnezzar, and they were these individuals were taken as the princes, and they were being groomed to be um, advisors to the king, if you will. And so there was somebody who was placed over Daniel, and all of these were being trained into Babylon, into the government service, and they were appointed the king's meat and his drink and everything from the king's table, which is a high honor. But Daniel had decided something different. Daniel and his friends. Let's see here. Um,
I got verse
here,
8.
verse
But
8. That's
Daniel
right.
purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore, he requested that he might not defile himself. In other words, may we be exempt from eating the rich foods of the monarchy?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And then he said in verse 11, Daniel said to Melzar, who was this person over them, um, he said in verse 12, sorry, prove, um, I beseech you, or request of you, 10 days. Prove us 10 days and let them give us pulse to eat. And if you look at that word, it really refers to like vegetables, you know, plant foods. Pulse to eat and water to drink. Then let our countenances be looked upon, and the countenance of those who ate the portion of the king's meat, and deal with us as you see, right? And so they found in verse 15, at the end of the 10 days, their countenances were fairer, and their flesh was better, and so it really was a testimony. And by the way, they were also found wiser than all the other wise men in the
Yeah.
sciences and other things.
Verse 10, 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers, the other advisors of the king.
Yeah.
Okay, so they were fairer. In other words, their appearance was more attractive. They were stronger, and their brains were working better. That's
That's right.
just in 10 days.
Yeah, yeah. In 10 days.
How many days does it take people at UG Pines to start feeling better, have more energy, so you're stronger, have their mind is clearer, maybe happier. How long does that usually take for those effects to start to take effect? When they get on this same diet that Daniel was put on.
Yeah, that's a good question. We have a residential live-in program, so people come to us for 17 days, 2.5 weeks, and um, it just depends on what the case is. We take people with diabetes and high blood pressure to cancer and autoimmune disease and obesity, different things, and most people, just within the first few days, they'll start to feel better. But we really see that it's kind of funny we went ventured into Daniel with the 10-day thing, because it's really around that time that people really noticeably feel better.
Interesting. I
Yeah,
did not know that. I did a 10-day thing through Belt of Truth Ministries, and I surveyed people, and the average person, it was like 5 to 6 days in, they were starting
yeah,
to feel better. I gave them a mental wellness survey.
yeah.
But really the fullness of those benefits you're finding are starting to come around day 10, huh?
Yeah, I mean, well, usually the first few days, it's kind of rough, because some people are
Yeah.
fasting, some people are coming off of foods that they're used to eating, some people are going through withdrawals, and I don't mean just from drugs, but even food withdrawals, and
Caffeine.
caffeine, exactly, all kinds of things, and people are going through drastic changes. Their gut, is going through changes. Their microbiome is going through changes. So people are kind of feeling odd the first few days. Generally, they do start to feel better, 3 or 4 days in, but they start seeing drastic improvements into the second week of the session. So that's when you start to see inflammatory markers coming down and pain levels coming down, and you see them starting to feel more energy and things like that. So, and I'm not saying that the magic number is 10, but it is. I find that the more consistent someone is, the better, and the more they're willing to just stick with it, even beyond our program. Usually, from the beginning of the program to an end, people feel night and day difference, and then those who continue with it 2, 3, 4, 8 months down the road are the ones who have the best results overall.
It tells me something wonderful about our God, that he provides such wonderful tasting, beautiful, nutritious food that makes us feel better. But he doesn't say, eat the way I told you to, or I'm going to hurt you.
Right.
It's test us for 10 days. That's prove us for 10
Yeah.
days. That's the old King James. Let's put this to the test, Your Highness. And they consent to it. And God's way is proven. We have a God who says, come now, let us reason together. I mean, this is a scientific experiment that
Right.
Daniel and his
Right.
three friends were permitted to participate in, right? I mean, the first one in recorded history. So people say the Bible is against science and they pit these two against each other. Not so. God wants us to reason, to test things, to reason from cause to effect. And then it proves his ways. That's Romans 12, verse 2. It's one of my favorite verses. It says, be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, and that you may know what is that acceptable and perfect will of God. And so it's like, this is how you will know. It's God wants to transform us, but it requires our consent, our will enlisted. And God is not a God of force, kind of like the king was, where they had to risk their lives to ask for that pulse and water diet. That's a dangerous thing, to reject the hospitality of the king. But let me get
Right.
you back to oatmeal, Ashwin. I know we could talk this one all day long.
Yeah. Yeah.
On our oatmeal topic, what's the burning thing that I didn't ask about yet in terms of the benefits of considering bringing oatmeal in its whole grain form into your diet?
Yeah, and that's a good question. It's not just the diet, but you can use oatmeal in different ways, is what I found in my little research that I'm sharing with you today. Um, and so, certainly, you get benefits as far as blood sugar control and weight management. There are other things as well. Oatmeal does tend to lower cholesterol. This is something that's actually been fairly well known for many years. And of course, cholesterol is a big factor in atherosclerosis, when you have buildup of plaque in the blood vessels, especially in the arteries, and that will lead to cardiovascular disease of all sorts, heart attacks, strokes, things like that. So, having some oatmeal in the diet will provide the soluble fiber, which can lower the cholesterol and reverse atherosclerosis. Oatmeal can actually help not just with cardiovascular disease, but it can also help with moods and anxiety and depression. Very interesting, because oatmeal has something called L-tryptophan, which is used to synthesize serotonin. So by including oatmeal in the diet, it can also help with anxiety and depression, which is very interesting. Um, I'll mention some of the other things that are beneficial internally. Let me break away from the internal use to the external use for a second. I thought this was rather interesting. I remember when I had chicken pox as a child, and
Ashwin, I was gonna say this very thing. Oh man, keep going, keep going. Me too.
yeah, that's what they do, is they do the oatmeal bath and aloe and things like that. And and of course that's just kind of, I thought it was just kind of like an old school home remedy, but I didn't know there was actually science to it. Um, in one of the journals of dermatology, they actually list some of the benefits of topical oatmeal extract. They found that it decreases arachidonic acid. Now, this is huge because arachidonic acid, phospholipase A2, these are things that are used to produce inflammation. So you have the COX pathway and the LOX pathway. We don't have to get into all that. But basically, arachidonic acid is used in order to produce an inflammatory response. And it tends to be high in animal products. A lot of people will say, I gave up red meat, and that's wonderful if you did. But then they go on to eat lots of chicken. Well, chicken tends to be very high in arachidonic acid, which means it can be pretty inflammatory. And anyway, not to get too off topic, but what they found was that oatmeal topically will actually decrease arachidonic acid. So if you're having an inflammatory condition, let's say of the skin, like dermatitis or whatever, oatmeal can actually decrease the things that are necessary to produce inflammation in that area. Oatmeal can also reduce TNF alpha. It can inhibit the release of pro-inflammatory cytokines and even histamines, by the way. Um, and it can help with inhibiting interleukin 8, which is, again, a pro-inflammatory cytokine. And and it can even uh, it also, the one of the extracts from oatmeal, oligomers, significantly mitigates uh, the mean surface of dilated vessels in edema. So in other words, that can help to reduce swelling, of course, in the skin. So topical oatmeal can be really beneficial, especially when someone is, when they're going through an inflammatory itching condition, some kind of dermatitis or whatever. Oatmeal can definitely help. It's also kind of an analgesic as well. It'll help soothe the area. We've used it for people who have like eczema and psoriasis, things like that. Not as a cure necessarily, but just as part of their treatment to reduce some of the inflammation topically. So that is definitely beneficial. So going back to the internal use, so we mentioned how oatmeal reduces cholesterol. We mentioned that oatmeal can help with anxiety and depression. But the part that I did not know was that oatmeal, more specifically, beta glucans, which are found in oatmeal and found in barley and other things, beta glucans actually can influence the human immune system, especially in the context of cancer. And this was actually an article published in the Journal of Hematology and Oncology, where they look at this very concept. So beta glucans act on some immune receptors, including something called dectin-1 and some other things. And it helps to trigger a group of immune cells. So your macrophages, neutrophils, monocytes, natural killer cells, dendritic cells. and basically, um, also it can cause these beta glucans can also help the immune cells tag cancer cells to make them more visible to the immune cells. So actually, eating oatmeal and barley, things that have lots of beta glucans, can potentially stimulate the immune system to be more hostile towards cancer cells. And I thought this was just fascinating.
Well, Ashwin, you've now hit cancer, you've hit heart disease in relation to the atherosclerosis, and of course, we spent a good amount of time on the diabetes. Those are three of the three big issues for
Yep,
society on a macro level here.
absolutely.
Oatmeal helps with all of those. I mean, I'm not surprised because God made it. It's
Yeah,
anything whole plant foods, especially that which is not altered and genetically modified and monkeyed with by man. This is God's gift to us, and it's going to work. And not every single food agrees with everybody, right? If there's somebody
right.
with an allergy for whatever reason in this fallen world, it's not anything you did wrong necessarily. It's just, you know what, oats aren't for me because they don't agree with me, or maybe somebody else is it's a different food. But I think you made the case for reconsidering oats as a front and center, affordable. And you know what else I like on the affordability scale? Affordability and nutritious impact, sweet potatoes. I know
Oh
I'm
yeah,
changing the subject on you. You're going to
yeah,
do a
yeah.
whole program on sweet potatoes.
Yeah,
Oh man,
yeah.
you're my broat meal, Ashwin. You're my broat meal.
Throat
Oh,
meal.
Jeremy, do we have any questions from the audience? We'd love to hear from you guys. Where are you watching from? We'll just give you a shout out or we'll take your questions. I love doing the live program. Sometimes we have to pre-record. You guys engage in the chat on your own. But talk to us about Greek yogurt from Tina Acosta.
All
Ashwin, please.
right. So Greek yogurt. I can't say I've studied much into it, but I will say this: yogurt, um, in general, um, I prefer to, if someone is going to take yogurt, to have a yogurt made from a plant source rather than using an animal milk or something like that. Yogurt can be beneficial, but it depends on the probiotic and for the purpose, for the therapeutic purpose of using probiotics. If someone has dysbiosis or if they have some other gut health issue, um, it's good to select a probiotic supplement that is high in the number of species. So I would say more than 10 or 12 species, and high in the CFUs, the colony forming units, in the multiple billions, so 25 billion, 50 billion, 100 billion. And the more expensive it tends to be, the better of a supplement it tends to be. And so using this type of very good quality probiotic supplement, as far as the capsule, you want to take that and break it into, let's say, some soy milk or almond milk or something like that, and let it colonize for a couple of days at room temperature in a mason jar or something like that. And then you have a nice, healthy plant-based yogurt, right? And that would be helpful. It's not quite related to the oatmeal subject. I mean, you can always add oatmeal to it, but it does tend to be quite effective in populating the gut with probiotics. Which, by the way, every time you eat a high fiber food, you're actually helping to develop your intestinal flora, your bacterial flora in your gut, and the more fiber you have, the more beneficial bacteria you have. So those are my thoughts on yogurt in general. I don't know about specifically Greek yogurt, but of course you can always add fruit to it and oatmeal or whatever else to it.
Yeah, with the different foods, it's like you can do it well or you can do it poorly. I mean, I growing up, I ate oatmeal, but probably 2/3 of the calories were from copious amounts of butter and brown sugar or maple
Yeah.
syrup, and it's just like the oats are great, a little bit of sweet in there, honey and some nuts and seeds and whatever, round it out and make it enjoyable. But hey, we got Jem says hello, everyone. Greetings from Oshawa, Ontario, Canada. I've been there. Good to see you, Jem, and everybody else watching from Canada. Oatmeal causes inflammation. That is in the form of a statement, but let me put it in the form of a question. Ashwin, what do you think about the idea that oatmeal causes inflammation?
Yeah, I don't. I'm not quite convinced that oatmeal causes inflammation. More of the research that I've seen points to the fact that it decreases inflammation, or will reduce some of the things that would cause inflammation. As we mentioned, there were studies even done on topical oatmeal. I think somebody may have had a question on dermatitis. On topical uh, oatmeal, it actually reduces arachidonic acid, which is what is one of the things that are used to produce inflammation, and and other things as well. So we actually find that oatmeal has anti-inflammatory effects, not necessarily pro-inflammatory effects. Now, I'm sure that there's some preparation of oatmeal that has lots of other things put in it that may, you know, lead to more inflammation. But the oatmeal itself, I don't know. And again, I'm not the world's leading
Well,
expert on
I'll
anything, but
I'll throw this in there. My wife has gluten free. She's got issues with gluten, and she uses in the past she has used gluten free oats, which oats don't technically have gluten, but apparently there's some crossover there. So
right.
maybe some of the issue with inflammation with oatmeal could be some contamination or some problems with people who just have a personal issue with not just gluten but perhaps oats themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Jem, for being with us. Joy says, "Is steel?" My question too is steel cut versus whole rolled oats better? I think you wanted to punt on that one, didn't you, Ashwin?
Yeah, yeah. I
All
think
right, no
it's
problem. Guests always have that privilege. So we'll go to the next question, Jeremy. Lorna says oatmeal has a lot of carbohydrates. It's not good if you want to lose weight. So what is a good weight loss proportions? Are you trying to lower your carbs for weight loss? Is that what you recommend?
right. So I'll say it this way: anything that's in excess will cause weight gain. So yes, you could gain weight with excess carbs. If you're eating lots of carbs, you're going to be breaking that down. It's going to be glucose, and that excess glucose that's not used for energy is going to be stored as fat. I 100% agree with that if you are overdoing it, for sure. But remember, we need carbs. If we go carb free, that will cause problems. So we absolutely need carbs as humans, and so eating a whole grain source in the right proportions is the key. You know, so nobody's going to be gaining weight from eating 1 cup of cooked oatmeal a day. I mean, now
Well,
if you're
is
loading
it
it,
pretty? Sorry, finish it. Go ahead.
well, I was just going to say that if you're loading it with like sugar and putting all kinds of other things, butter and fat and all this stuff in it, then it's no longer a 100 something calorie dish. Now it's like, 600-700 calories for that one thing, which really the oatmeal is getting blamed for, but it's not necessarily that.
People probably are gaining weight from eating carbs in the form of soda, or what we call in Michigan pop, um,
Yeah.
or folks down in the South call Coke. Everything's a Coke, whether it's orange or root beer or whatever. It's all Coke, but
Yeah.
or candy, white bread, white everything.
Yeah. Rice.
That is gonna, yeah, white rice.
Yeah.
So when you're promoting whole plant foods, that's foods in their full fiber packages, right? And
That's
that's
right.
more
Right.
difficult to overdo the calorie intake on those, carbs or otherwise, because the fiber is satiating you, right? Is that
Yeah.
pretty much how it works?
Oh, yeah. I tell people, try to eat 700 calories of fried chicken. It's very easy to do, and you may still be hungry, but try to eat 700 calories of broccoli. That would be really difficult to do.
Yeah,
um, and so even if you love broccoli, and I love broccoli, I could eat broccoli every day.
me too.
But with with oatmeal, this kind of thing, when you're eating a whole grain, and remember, we're not saying to just eat oatmeal.
Of course.
We're supposed to be eating a balanced diet. We're
Yeah.
talking about vegetables, fruits, different things in the right timing, in the right proportions. And so if you're including other things along with the oatmeal, it would be very difficult for someone to put on weight with that in the right proportions, and without loading it with other unhealthy things like unhealthy fats like butter and stuff like that.
Yeah, especially if you're eating only at mealtime and eating 2 meals a day or a light third meal. It's difficult to gain a lot of weight on the
Right.
full fiber whole plant food diet, which is naturally high in carbohydrates, but in their God designed packages. I love that
Right.
word you used earlier, designed. Jeremy,
Yeah.
who else do we have? Crown says, do a video about buckwheat, please. All right, Jeremy, LSR team, take note. We got a video on buckwheat coming up, I hope. Oats are gluten. Buckwheat is a lot better and is gluten-free. Comment?
I Oats are not, and I think you mentioned it earlier, Scott. Oats actually are not are a gluten free food, but there can be contamination just like with everything these days. So yeah, I
And
wouldn't.
sometimes, do some people have where the protein in oats is so similar to gluten that their body thinks it's being attacked by gluten?
Yeah, I mean that. Yeah, you can see that with different foods as well.
There are a
So,
lot of allergies to oats
yeah.
out there, aren't there?
Yeah, I don't know how, I don't know any statistics per se off the top
No.
of my head, but
But it seems like corn, like certain foods have disproportionately high allergy
yeah,
issues with people. Dairy.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, thank you.
definitely.
Thank you, Jem. People are loving the buckwheat, man. We keep getting that keeps showing up. That's great. Dr. May says it does show through research that oatmeal has gliadin, which is not for human consumption. Comment on that, Ashwin?
No, I haven't looked into that too much. So
You're seeing people thrive by eating oatmeal at UT Pines and in the research. I
yeah,
keep hearing these things about that's not for human consumption. Like grains aren't for human consumption and there are
right.
anti-nutrients and these are terrible things. And then all the research that I keep seeing is the more of these whole plant foods that people are eating, their disease risk
Yeah.
reduces and their lifespan increases. So maybe these theories aren't quite, matching with reality.
Yeah, I've also had similar thoughts. When people say something is not for human consumption, I just wonder, and this is not directed towards the person who asked the comment, but just in general, I asked the question, on what grounds do we say that? On what grounds do we say that certain things are not for human consumption? Because there are people who promote different diets that are known to cause harm to the body. But it's interesting when you examine things that are known to cause good to the body. There's always a little something we can pick apart from it and say that this may not be good for human consumption. But if you take the whole food, and it's possible that if you just take the one thing by itself apart from the whole food, that
Right.
you may have issues. But taking the whole food together, when we say whole food, we mean the whole package with the fiber, with the phytochemicals, and all these things. Taking it together, we actually find benefits.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. You can't argue with the results. Hey,
right.
let's go to the next question. And we love the dialogue from all perspectives. Everybody's welcome here. I love hearing different perspectives on things and hashing it out. Jem says, I love the buckwheat too. She says to Crown. That's awesome. Love it. Love it. Indeed. And Jem, they do have gluten-free oatmeal. Yeah, we covered that one. Thanks again, Crown, for chiming in on that in the chat. And Linda says, my understanding is that oats are high in lectin. That is so funny because when we were just talking about anti-nutrients and stuff, the anti-legume guy who went super viral like 5 years ago, he popped into my head and I was going to bring him up and say, Ashwin, you got to comment on lectins, but I wanted to let the commenters lead us here. But hey, what is this thing about lectins? Gluten, I think we discussed. This does not seem to add up. Perhaps if you left as an intervention. Okay, so just deal with the lectin question. Oats, but especially beans. Are these problematic foods because they have lectin? Oh, we lost him. I'm trying to think of the author's name. Somebody in the chat help me with that while we wait for Ashwin to come back. It was this big viral sensation, and then there was this product that was. Oh, he's back. He's back. Okay,
Yeah.
what were
Sorry.
you going to say?
Yeah. I was thinking about this with different types of foods. They talk about things being causing inflammation in the gut lining. And again, I'm not claiming to be the know all expert in everything, but when you take things and isolate them away from the whole food, that's when you have problems, right? When you're taking the whole food in and of itself, there are plant chemicals that work together for good, and so um, if anything, some of these things are even more beneficial than they would be harmful unless you're isolating things, so this is really, and even in medicine this is the case. When you're isolating things and giving them, giving concentrated doses of things to people, you'll have way more issues than if you're eating something from the original whole source.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Jeremy, let's take 2 more questions. And if you didn't get your questions in, keep on coming back. Melody says, oatmeal shoots my blood sugars high, and then I have rebound low blood sugars. Do you want to help Melody out with that?
Yeah, and that's interesting. I Whenever I get questions like this, I always ask the question, what else are you eating? There's always things to consider when it comes to blood sugar management, which is what you're eating, how much are you eating, what time are you eating it, right? And so things to consider. Then also, how much physical activity are you doing? If you're taking insulin or medication, these are all questions to ask, which we don't have nearly enough information to really say much. Plus, I'm just a guy in a window. You should talk
Right.
to
Visit
your
UT
healthcare
Pines.
provider. Yeah,
Yeah.
talk to your healthcare provider to get more info. But I will say this. Um, could any carbohydrate send your blood sugar up? Yes, absolutely, it could. It just depends on, so the blood sugar spiking high could be because of I'm assuming it's type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance. If there's severe insulin resistance, any even whole grains that you eat will send the sugars up. Now, that doesn't mean that forever, for the rest of your life, you can't eat these grains. It just means you got to work with your body to reduce the insulin resistance so that you can handle eating some of these things without the drastic spikes. So interesting about the rebound low blood sugars. I have many questions that I can't ask publicly in this forum to understand more. But if you would like, we do phone consultations. You can always call UG Pines and speak to one of our providers and schedule some time to talk, and we can get more details about this.
What's a good URL for folks to check out UT Pines and reach out to you guys?
Yeah, you could go to our website, www.uchepines.org.
Jeremy, do you have a QR code perhaps, or spell that out one more time just in case he doesn't?
Yep, UCHEPINES, UCHEEPINES.org. And you could contact us there. You can call our office and schedule an appointment with one of our providers on our medical staff. We love to talk to people and help you figure it out. But generally, just to quick answer this question, sure, anything could, even a whole food could cause an a glucose spike. It won't be as drastic as it would be if it was a refined grain, like white rice versus brown rice, but what you really want to address is the insulin resistance. And a lot of times that could be dealt with using different interventions like fasting, calorie restriction, exercise, the 2 meal plan, as Scott mentioned earlier. 2 meals a day, 5 to 6 hours apart. Starting with breakfast, ending with lunch, and then fasting till the next day. And for some people with severe insulin resistance, sometimes alternate day fasting is very helpful to deal with the insulin resistance. There's many factors, and I can't quite say everything because I don't know if the person's taking meds or whatever that's influencing this. But you could, let's say you control for everything. You just want to do that consistently. The insulin resistance will reduce over time, and you can start introducing small amounts of whole grains, which doesn't have to just be oatmeal. It could be buckwheat or whatever, or millet. You could introduce those things in small quantities. It may cause the blood sugar to go up a little bit, but you may need to adjust your exercise intensity. So increase the time that you spend walking, for example,
especially right after a meal.
Yeah, that's right. Right after a meal, especially when you know you're adjusting things and introducing whole grains into the diet from for someone who has severe insulin resistance. Increasing physical activity will be beneficial. So uh, these are all different things that one could use. And again, I just want to stress that it's important to do this with your provider. Talk to your healthcare provider, especially if someone's on insulin or meds. You don't want to do this kind of haphazardly because that could be dangerous. But doing it with someone who can help guide you through that to know how to make those adjustments is the key to success that I find.
Absolutely. uchipines.org. Last question. P. Leslie says, what about oat milk? And that maybe was on the heels of the person asking about yogurt.
Right.
Do you like oat milk, Ashwin? I mean, not do you enjoy it, but is it beneficial? I mean, you could tell us if you enjoy it or not too.
Yeah, what do I think about oat milk? It's creamy. Yeah. I mean, I haven't looked quite specifically into oat milk as a therapeutic intervention, but again, if the oatmeal or the oat milk, which is made from oatmeal, contains these beta glucans and other things, that's when you will find that's when you'll find the benefits that we had discussed. And Scott, if you want, I can actually do a little quick summary of all the
Yeah.
benefits of
Oh
oatmeal.
yeah. Hit him. Hit him.
Yeah.
Yep.
So here's the summary of some of the things we talked about and some of the things we didn't talk about, but I may have brushed through it a little bit. So, of course, the big one is oatmeal does improve insulin resistance. This has been tried for over 100 years, and many people have replicated this. So it does improve insulin resistance. Oatmeal reduces inflammation. Oatmeal has antipyretic effects. In other words, it'll help with soothing the skin topically, right? Oatmeal improves the gut microbiome. Oatmeal improves the gastric emptying time, which is the time it takes for the food to move from the stomach to the intestines. Oatmeal does lower cholesterol. It reduces atherosclerosis, which is the plaque buildup in the arteries, which leads to cardiovascular disease, right? Oatmeal does, interestingly, have anti-cancer effects. We found the beta-glucans helps to tag the cancer cells and makes it more visible for the immune cells to recognize and kill cancer cells. Oatmeal has immunomodulatory effects. It can influence it by stimulating or calming things down. And oatmeal has antidepressive effects. As we mentioned, the L-tryptophan in oatmeal, which helps to produce serotonin, which can help with anxiety and depression, things like that. So yeah, and this is just Scott, this is just one food, and again,
God
we're not
is so amazing. Like
yeah
you just, wow.
that's the point. That's the point that I'm making here. It's not really to draw attention to oatmeal. I want to be clear about that. We're not here. We don't worship oatmeal. We're not a cult, an oatmeal cult or anything like that. You know,
All jokes aside, but no,
yeah,
my point is if you can talk about the benefits of one food that for an interview, like we just the variety, the diversity, the depth of benefit of each of these foods that God made for us, let's celebrate the food, but praise the God that made them.
that's right. That's right. And I'm just in awe that this one food has so many benefits, and He gave it to us for our use. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and you look at all the things we talked a little bit about Genesis in the beginning. We look at all the things that God created, and He made it for man. And you wonder why. Well, He made it because He loves you.
Amen.
That's the thing. I don't think people understand how much God loves you. He doesn't want to give you something that will harm you. He wants to give you something that will be for your good and for your benefit, so that you can be closer in connection with Him. And because we believe, and I believe personally, that connecting with God brings man his greatest joy. And so as we use some of these simple foods, we can do a 3-part series just on oatmeal. I'm not suggesting that, but any of these foods that we pick, or any of the natural remedies, I'll say, when we find God's power behind it, it speaks of His love for humanity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Let's do natural remedies next time. What do you say?
I'm
We've
down.
had you on kidneys. We've got you on a couple of niche topics. which is awesome.
Yeah.
But I want to experience the Ashwin on kind of like the broad, like natural remedies, do a Q&A. Would you
Yeah.
be up for that?
Oh, definitely. I'd love to
Jeremy,
do.
book him. I love Ashwin. He's a friend. I'm sure you picked that up, folks. And I like what Jem said there, by the way. Big food industry does the cheap, high sugar, high processed junk, genetically modified. And so, yeah, beware. Get yourself some good quality, whole grain, organic food as cheap as you can. Yep, same thing Tara's saying here. Stay away from processed or packaged or flavored. Oh, it's natural flavors.
Yeah.
Natural. Come on now. Let's go to real nature. So thanks, Jeremy, for the bonus ones you threw in there. And Ashwin, thanks for coming on again, brother.
Thanks,
and
brother.
tell all the folks there at UT Pines hello from
I will.
Scott, from LSR. We all love you guys over there.